Does the beginning of the universe prove God exists? Let's consider. Hello philosophers, I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher's Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. Today we'll look at an argument for the existence of God from the beginning of the universe called the Kalam Cosmological Argument. The word Kalam we get from the Arabic because this is from the Islamic tradition, from Muslim philosophers. This is where it started off, and recently it has been heavily developed by a philosopher named William Lane Craig. So today we'll look at his version of the argument from his popular book, Reasonable Faith. When I say popular, by the way, I don't mean popular as in tons of people read it. I mean popular as in it's written for lay persons and it's not his scholarly work. But he does make a lot of his scholarly work available on his website, and he engages with, the top level philosophers. So you definitely want to check it out. Check out his website. I think it's reasonablefaith.org. I'm not totally positive on that. I'll put a link in the description. But let's say you see a cheeseburger all of a sudden. You say to me, hey, where did this cheeseburger come from? And I say to you, nowhere. It just appeared. It just popped into existence. Does that sound plausible? No, that's not believable. So premise one to his argument is whatever begins to exist requires a cause. This is known as the principle of causation. We actually already saw this in the argument from change. So go ahead and check that video out again if you're interested. And there it looks very much differently. And I also addressed some objections to the law of causation. And you can check out those videos as well. Craig gives 3 reasons why we should believe in the principle of causation. First, it rests upon the very intuitive principle that something can't come from nothing. That just sounds like something that is like basic level, everybody can believe. A second reason is, if we're going to say that the principle of causation can be violated, then why don't we see it happening all the time? I'm not saying that it should be happening every moment, every second of the day, but we should at least be seeing it sometimes, right? We should be seeing cheeseburgers pop into existence. And that brings me to a third point. If we believe in things that can be verified, right? If we believe in things that are empirically verifiable, then it seems like this principle is the most empirically verifiable principle, or at least one of the most empirically verifiable principles that there are around. Everything you see has some kind of cause, and you don't look around and see things that are causeless. So it seems like we're constantly getting this verified by our observation. So for those 3 reasons, it seems like the principle of causation is sound. It seems like number 1 is a solid premise. The second premise is that the universe began to exist. Now, Craig gives 2 philosophical arguments and 2 scientific arguments for this premise. And we'll go over the philosophical arguments first and then the scientific ones. So first one is that it's absurd to say that there is an actual infinite series that exists. And I've actually already talked about this. You could check out my videos on the actual versus potential infinity. But for a quick rehash, one of the absurd things that would result is best exemplified in Hilbert's Hotel. So the idea here is, pretend you had an infinite number of hotel rooms in a hotel, and they were all occupied. And then a busload of infinite number of people show up and they want rooms. Well, you could make room for these people just by taking all of the people in the natural number of rooms, right? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Like that. And moving them all to the even number rooms, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And why would that work? Well, because there are just as many even number rooms as there are natural number rooms. There are just as many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's an infinite number, right? So if you're talking infinity, you get these absurd things happening. So if we're saying that there really could be an infinite series like this, you would have these bizarre things existing, right? An infinite number of hotel rooms where you could just switch over the natural number of people over to the even number of rooms, and then all of a sudden all the odds are now open up, and so an infinite number of people can show up and jump in there. I don't know. I hope that makes sense, but if I didn't do a good enough job explaining it here, please go ahead and check out my video on Hilbert's Hotel. But in any case, why we care about this now is Because if we're going to say that the universe did not have a beginning, we're saying that there's an infinite amount of time before today. But that's absurd, right? That would be just like saying, like, pretend like each moment is a hotel room. That's like saying there's an infinite number of those hotel rooms. Now, let's say that in each moment, each little hotel room, we have an event. We could do the same kind of bizarre thought experiment, take each event and move it to an odd number of moments. And then now we have a whole nother infinity of time that's available. That's absurd. And if you were, so just so you know, like, there's a philosopher, Aristotle, thought that time could be infinite in the past because it's not like all existing right now. Like, he thought it would be absurd to have an actual infinite existing altogether, but time doesn't exist once it's past. So he thought, so there's no problem, right? Because there aren't an infinite number of moments right now. There's like just an infinite number of moments that no longer exist. But if you want to run this argument, you can just say, pretend that God creates a hotel room at each moment. And now you have an infinite number of hotel rooms, assuming that there is an infinite number of time, you know? So you can still get the same kind of absurdity out of it. So that's his first argument, is that absurdities result if we were to claim that there's an actual infinite series. His second argument is that we can't add to infinity. Think about it. What is the number before infinity? 99998, 99999, infinity. We made it. Does that make sense? No, you can't do that, right? Because then once you got to infinity, you could also always say like infinity plus 1, infinity plus 2. But infinity is not like that, right? Infinity is supposed to be something that, you know, that encompasses all the numbers that you can add up to. But if you could add up to infinity, then you could always add one more. So it seems like infinity is not something that we can add up to. But then time proceeds by moments passing, just like counting numbers, right? Moment 1, moment 2, moment 99998, moment 99999. So can we really say that we got to a moment infinity? No, you couldn't count up to infinity like that. Another way you could put this to say there's no way for us to traverse an infinity, right? There's no way for us to go from a beginning all the way through an infinite amount of time. You'll never actually get to infinity. So thinking of things that way, there's no way for us to have gotten to today if there's an infinite amount of time in the past. Now, some people will object that this argument assumes that there is some kind of beginning to the universe, and that the claim is that there's an infinite amount of time between that beginning of the universe and today. And that's not the claim. The claim is that there's a beginningless universe, right? That there is no beginning to the universe. So, and then every moment that you could think of, there's a finite distance between today and that moment. So, you know, you think about a moment 20 years from before, or 100 years from before, or a billion years from before, whatever you want to do, any moment you pick, there's a finite distance. There's just an infinite number of these moments that are finite distance away from us. Unfortunately, I don't think this makes any sense. This would be like saying that somebody could write down all the negative numbers up to 0, right? From negative infinity all the way to 0. Does that make sense? Can we traverse that negative infinite? That makes less sense than saying we could start at 0 and go up to infinity. So this objection, I don't think makes any sense. Now is scientific arguments. So the first one here is, I'm going to simplify his arguments down to, I think, the bare bones minimum. The linchpin of his first scientific argument is the Borguth-Vilenkin theorem, which says that any universe which over its past has on average been expanding cannot be eternal in the past, but must have some space-time boundary in the past. Now, our universe is, on average, in the past, been expanding. So our universe must have some boundary in the past. And whether that looks like one specific moment, whether that's a rounded off beginning, something like that, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be some kind of beginning there. And this goes for all string theories or multiverses or oscillating universes. This theorem actually has been widely accepted in the scientific community, and it shows that all the different models of the universe that describe how the universe has come to be, they all point back to some kind of beginning part. Originally you could have said that the Big Bang is the best science there is, and the Big Bang points to some, first point. But then all these theories came out, all these models, in order to try to avoid a first moment. But this Born-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which again has been widely accepted in the scientific community, shows that no matter what these models do, they're going to have to posit some beginning. His second argument is from thermodynamics. So the second law of thermodynamics says that processes taking place in a closed system always tend towards a state of equilibrium. So given a sufficient time, any universe is going to die a heat death. Any universe is going to go from having, things organized in different ways to everything just sort of being scattered out in some kind of disarray. What does this mean? Take any kind of change you can think of. So let's say I pick up this pencil, right? When I pick up this pencil, we say that energy has been transferred, and we think that it's been transferred equally, except for there's just a bit of energy that's been lost to heat energy, right? And heat energy is this kind of chaotic energy. And the more and more heat energy is not redeemable, right? It goes off and becomes entropy, becomes just this chaotic stuff that we can't get back. And the more and more you do things, the more and more entropy is introduced into the system. And eventually you're going to get nothing but this heat energy, as more and more things happen. So if it's the case that we had been in existence for an infinite amount of years, if the universe has been in existence for an infinite amount of time, then that means it should have already reached this equilibrium. It should already have died the heat death that it's supposed to have. And this is what scientists believe, that our universe is going to have this heat death. But it should have already happened if we have an infinite amount of time before today. But it hasn't, so it must be the case that we haven't had an infinite amount of time before today. Now, probably the best objection I've heard, and Craig talks about this, is inflationary bubble universes. So the idea is that there is this multiverse kind of giving birth to different bubble universes. And in all these bubble universes, some of them are going to be low entropy states, and most of them are going to be high entropy states. And we must just be one of the ones that are low entropy states. His response to this is to say that there are two kinds of worlds that could support observers. There are going to be very low volume, young, low entropy worlds, and thermal fluctuations in high entropy worlds. So in other words, they're going to be just like, there's going to be these high entropy worlds where you just have like a quick fluctuation in the amount of entropy that is in that system. Now, it's incomprehensibly more likely that we have just a small region with a thermal fluctuation than to have something as big as our universe. So the overwhelming probability is, and this is by like magnitudes that are unfathomable. So the overwhelming probability is that we're actually in a much smaller universe, and that we are just a brain that is observing an illusion in one of these smaller fluctuations. This idea is called Boltzmann brains. And the idea is that this is absurd. Nobody actually believes that you're just a Boltzmann brain. So we should throw out this idea of this multiverse. My thoughts on this, I've spoken to people who are very happy to say that everything is an illusion. So I don't really know how they're going to take that, because when they say everything's an illusion, usually they're thinking like everything is a happy illusion where like everything is Brahman, and Brahman is good, and so we should just enjoy the ride, kind of thing. But Boltzmann brains wouldn't be quite as happy as that. Another type of person I think that would be hard to reach is a person that would say, well, regardless of the probability, there's still a chance. So you're saying there's a chance. And the chance here, to be sure, is like, he says in the book, 10 to the 1,230th power, which is an absurd number, ridiculous number. But people who don't have a good handle on numbers are apt to say, yeah, but there's a non-zero probability, so I'm going to say that that's probably where we're at. Even though these are wild theories or wild stances to take, I should say, people will take them. And here's the thing. Even if you take those stances, the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem still works on the inflationary multiverse. So the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem is still going to win out. So it turns out that the first argument, this first scientific argument, is still going to be valid for these types of universes. And this second, the thermodynamics argument, is just one that's convincing for most people. So for that reason, I think the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem argument is by far the stronger argument. But this one, I don't think you should throw away. It's good that he keeps mentioning it. It's just that the other one is the stronger one. The conclusion he gives is that the universe must have a cause. Now, he mentions that Daniel Dennett has the claim that possibly the universe created itself. And I remember I was in the American Philosophical Association, and I went to one of their meetings, and I probably should renew my membership. I haven't been in it for a long time, but I went to a presentation where the guys pretty much presented a paper that said something really similar, that basically the universe created itself. It caused itself to come into existence. And I remember sitting there, and because my grad school was all about Thomas Aquinas, like what Craig mentions, what Aquinas says, that was already like just steeped in my mind. So I'm sitting there trying to make sense out of what they're like. Are they really saying this, that the universe could cause itself? Like, that can't be right. So as soon as the Q&A came up, I went up and I asked, like, so you're saying the universe could cause itself? Wouldn't that mean that the universe had to exist before it existed? And because you can't do something, you can't cause something unless you exist. And they looked dumbfounded, like they hadn't thought of it before. And I mean, not to knock the guys, but because I mean, that's just Aquinas 101. So yeah, I would say that this is not a very good, and this is a terrible answer. Don't go this route. Okay. If you're going to object to this argument, this is the worst one you could go with. But in any case, that's the conclusion of the argument. Now, as to exactly why this cause must be God, the properties of this cause is something that we're going to get to in future videos. So stay tuned. I know I've already said this in past videos on this, but we're going to go through a few more arguments for the existence of God, and then we're going to start to get into the attributes of this first cause, this cause of all other things. So stay tuned for it. And remember what I always say, the best philosophy always happens in dialogue. So please hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.